Hello, and welcome to this recording for your World Geography and Cultures A course. For those of you watching recording, it is 7 to 10 lines of an email review to get the extra credit. So we're going to have a look overall at what you will study in part A of the course and why you are studying it. One of the most basic things with regard to studying geography is, as you study in Unit 1, Module 1, is the fundamentals of geography and understanding the climates of the world and why we need geography to understand history. If it wasn't for the different climates, there would be no history of our time on this planet, as it were. In other words, the current view historically is that all humans walked out of Africa 200,000 years ago. And then, in accordance with climate and climate change, we settled in different parts of the planet. So you will study why humans chose to settle in different parts of the planet. And then you will also look at how geography and history are interconnected, as in why did humans choose to live beside rivers? Why did they choose to live in certain areas of the world? And to this day, we can continue to analyze why certain areas of the world are not suitable for human habitation, etc. Um, the importance of world geography and culture is at its height at the moment because of global warming. We live in a world that is now 1 degree warmer than it was in the pre-industrial age. And the more you learn on this course, through each of the modules and your own reading, will enable you to help and to guide future generations. And I'm going to show you a video now of a prize that is out there for any of those of you who join history, geography and science and have an interest in putting forward ideas that will help us realign the ecosystems that we seem to have done so much damage to. Climates will always change, but when humans start changing the climates, it's not always a good thing. And from the pre-industrial age, we changed the climate with regard to the world global warming being 1 degree warmer, and the impact that has had on countries in Africa that are already vulnerable, or countries that are at sea level, like the Netherlands or in Indonesia, that are now suffering flooding. Sometimes there are countries like Venice that have always historically flooded, but now the flooding is reaching danger levels. So there is a balance between, yes, some of it is historical, but there is no question that the weather patterns based on climate change are not the norm as it currently stands. There are deniers like President Trump who say climate change is not happening. The difference is that climate change is not always, has not always been caused by human um, interaction with the planet, as you see from your 5 themes of geography. In this case, it is believed that it is. So we'll have a quick look if any of you are so inclined to see if you have an interest in coming up with ideas that will help future generations. So that is just an example of how people in the ordinary world of communication are concerned about our 5 themes of geography, how human interaction has impacted on the world with regard to climate change. Okay, so let's have a look at the actual course that and the units that you will be studying. So we will begin with Unit 1 and the course modules for same. So please remember that in Unit 1, as we have said, that you will begin with understanding the fundamentals of geography, understanding the 5 themes of geography, and how human environment interaction is not always a good thing, but yet it is something that can be controlled and explained. How movement has impacted and is at an all-time high with regard to uh, communications on flow of ideas. For example, movement can be caused voluntarily or it can be forced through environmental factors, and people have to adapt. So we know that the places that the first city that we come across ever that was civilized, as far as we know, is in modern day Iraq and in the cradle of civilization of Mesopotamia. But you will also look at how, as we moved forward, why do people choose different environments to locate themselves in? And what is the concept? What is your understanding of place? How do you describe place? What are the unifying features that help you describe place? And how do we amalgamate all these places together as one region? Then we go forward and we look at the water cycle with regard to understanding when we first settled, the concept of human beings moving from hunter-gatherers, which is only 10,000 years ago, which is not a long time ago, to farming people. And then we began to develop city life, and that's what civilization is. Well, we need to understand the importance of the water cycle in all of that and the amazing world and ecosystem around us and how it's all interconnected. Remember, once they got access to fresh water, they could irrigate. That gave them the challenge to create new tools, but it also created other challenges with regard to the environment. So let's have a look at that as well, the amazing water cycle in which you have a project to do in Unit 1. Okay, that's just a look at how people who travel, astronauts who have the privilege of looking down at the Earth, view our planet and help explain our interconnection with ecosystems the other side of the world. We will look at that further in Unit 4 when we study the Amazon rainforest and how it is connected and fertilized from the Sahara and the winds that cross the Atlantic Ocean, etc. So the whole purpose of this course is to help you understand how everything is interconnected. Everything has an impact. We sorry, I meant to press. Everything is interconnected. That we have an impact, and our actions, from the choice of food, the location, the origin of the food that we eat. I mean, there is an onslaught against people that are considered trendy eaters at the moment, my side of the world, because the carbon footprint of the avocados, etc., that are coming from South America. And not just that, the actual growing conditions and the workers and the people selling them, who are now, it's now called the green gold, etc., is because avocados, etc., are so popular my side of the world that there are questions over, do people understand, if they think they're eating ethically, do they think about how did that fruit or how did that food get from one part of the world to another, and you have to think about your carbon footprint with regard to that. So in module 2, we look at populations. When people settle down, when they choose to live in areas that have the raw materials and the resources that they need, what do populations do, and how did religions come about? So we discuss what our understanding of culture is and what our understanding of religion is. And then we also look at the fact that there are, we have developed countries which are considered to be the industrialized countries of the world, like France, Britain, USA, etc. Then we have countries that are aiming towards, like China, that is considered a developing country, yet we think it's one of the superpowers, yet 65% of Chinese people live in rural poverty. So you need to understand your terms in this unit as to how we interconnect as cultures. Like, how do you define a country? So, a country is defined by the population, by the concept of sovereignty. It has its own laws, its own powers, and the territory, the borders, and government. That's what defines a country. Like, what makes the country that you live in different to the country that I live in? What makes, for example, I live in Ireland. But Ireland is a geographical concept because it is an island. But then the country that I live in is the Republic of Ireland. Why? Because there's two countries, as you will see in module 5, I think it is, or 6, that Ireland is a country that was part of the British Empire, and part of Ireland became independent of the British Empire, but part of it remains within it. So you need to understand the different concept between a geographical term for an area, like the island of Ireland, and then the political concept of a country. So that's what you're learning in Unit 2, Module 2, is how countries developed, and and how we impact on each other. What is cultural convergence, for example? So it's when skills and arts come into contact with each other. Or cultural diffusion, it's when one culture moves from one area and travels a distance to another area. It's like in New York, they eat Italian pizza, or the internet is the major source of cultural diffusion at the moment. It's, the printing press of its day. It's, everything can be used for good or evil. From my opinion, the internet is an amazing source. It makes live online teaching possible, etc. Sadly, there is still cultural divergence. So divergence means separating of cultures. So you have countries, for example, like North Korea, and to an extent China, and to an extent any country that prevents you from researching what should be accessible material. We all know there's certain things on the internet that should not be accessible. But if a government chooses not to let you freely decide on ideas, etc., then that's cultural divergence and only allows you see what they choose about other countries. That's cultural divergence as well. And remember, you'll be asked in this unit to explain how religion and language are connected. So remember, certain religions are associated with languages. So the Christian religion tends to be associated with Indo-European languages. That the Indo-European languages are languages like English, Irish, etc. All Indo-European language, not all, but Indo-European languages tend to be associated with Christian religions. Then you have, for example, Arabic tends to be associated with the Muslim religion. It's not a finite rule, but it's a general discussion on how languages tend to be associated with certain religions and certain minorities, apologies. And again, remember your module exams, you have 2 hours to take them, but it should take less than that. You should get it done within the hour. Then within module 3, you will look at the US and Canada, the 2 great neighbors, yet they're very different. Remember, people in the US know less about Canada than Canada does about the US, because the US is it's a superpower. It's a major player on the world stage. So we all know about the US. Canada, not so much, even though they border each other and the size of Canada, one would think. But they have different histories that you will study and understand how, even though both were controlled by Britain at a time, then the United States became independent, whereas Canada, the Queen of England is still technically head of state of Canada. And we look at the resources of both countries and the different regions of both countries. And please remember, do not go to the internet. Everything on your course is based on the course reading. Do not go outside of your course on the internet unless they tell you to study something. Because when they put the questions at the end of the unit, it is based on your unit reading. So that's what you're supposed to be reading and understanding the regions as they give them to you. Please do not go looking at other sources on the internet, because you will get the information mixed up and you will not give them the required information for their assignments, particularly in the Canada assignment. I find that sometimes people go to internet. Don't do that. Go to the regions that they give you, because otherwise you have not been studying the course content. Okay. And again, remember, all of your semester exam is based on the module exams. Nothing in the semester exam should be a surprise to you, because you will have seen all of the questions before. Then we move to module 4, which is the introduction to Latin America. Remember, Latin America is more of a cultural term than a geographical term. So you're talking about the countries that speak the languages of Europe. Like in Brazil, they speak Portuguese, and in Mexico and Argentina, they speak Spanish, etc. They were the old European languages. So that's what's meant by Latin America. And we look at Mexico and we identify how all of these countries had to strive for independence. They tried to copy the American Revolution, and though they didn't succeed, they're a long time catching up on it, because they didn't have the history of self-government that America had. And again, we look at Brazil, and again, this helps you to understand that the Brazilian people very often get irritated at this patronizing they feel of the Amazon. They feel that people don't really understand. You know, everybody calls the Amazon the lungs of the planet, yet all of the oxygen produced in the Amazon is used in the Amazon, because there are so many creatures in the Amazon. And remember that with regard to when you're studying this course, it will help you understand why we think, you know, with regard to the Amazon rainforest, that we know all of the concepts and terms with regard to it. Whereas the people of Brazil is a country that has a lot of print. It also has a lot of beautiful culture and beautiful traditions. But there is no doubt that they don't like being lectured by countries like France. You would have seen that in the media recently about how they should or should not be treating the people of the Amazon rainforest. And we're going to have a quick look at the amazing Amazon rainforest and the river, the main river of cloud that flows above it. You know, we always think of the Amazon River on the Earth's surface, but above the Amazon rainforest, just as we saw there, there's an amazing river of cloud that we're going to have a look at here now. Okay, and again, that is just an example of how our um, all our lives are interconnected, that a river of cloud from such a distance can have an impact. And the people of Brazil, if you study the actual reactions to the world opinion of how they're encroaching on the Amazon rainforest, they feel that it's very patronizing. So it is something, as you're studying through the unit, you should make an effort to understand and relate to. So after Unit 4, you will then move towards Western Europe, my side of the world, and you will be looking at the physical geography of the island of Britain and the island of Ireland. Remember, Britain and Ireland are geographical concepts. Then they will try to explain to you, which is easier when you're reading rather than listening to me, but the United Kingdom is a political concept because the United Kingdom, part of Ireland, is part of the United Kingdom. That's a political concept. But Britain is actually a geographical concept. Or you could say the countries of Britain are England, Wales, and Scotland. But the countries of the United Kingdom, as they will teach you, are four. They're England, Wales, and Scotland, and a part of Ireland. And you're asked for your opinion of the two Irelands, and it will be explained to you. Part of it, everything moves on. They focus on the Protestant Catholic discussions there. I live on the island of Ireland, so I would know that, for example, in the 1980s, 90% of Catholics attended service or attended Mass. Now it's down to something like 14%. Religion does not play a part, but religion can be part of culture. So what hides under the cloak of religion can often be pre-inclined bias that comes from the culture that you were reared in. And if you are in an area in which cultural divergence, as we have said, is practiced, that you're not encouraged to understand about other people, then you can end up having a very narrow view of life, and very often that leads to tension and conflict, as ignorance often does. And we also look at the Nordic nations and the Atlantic current, and how the Nordic nations very often are not as cold in areas that you would expect them to be, etc. Unit 6, finally, we get to, and you will study France, Germany, and the Benelux countries. The Benelux countries are known by the first letters of each of their names: Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. And you're asked, questions like, with regard to Netherlands, how is climate change affecting it and rising sea levels? But also note the economic aspects of it as well. So countries like Netherlands, like we started off with, would have the economic power to invest, to prepare. There's actually considerations being put in place with regard to dams and all sorts of things to do with rising sea levels. Whereas countries like Indonesia, more vulnerable countries like Myanmar, etc., they don't have the same level of wealth to deal with rising sea levels, so they're dealing with it in different ways. We look at the two Italies. We know it's not like Ireland, where there's political divisions. In Italy, northern Italy is more successful. People move there, is richer, both in natural resources, agriculture, factories, than southern Italy, and you look at why has that happened. And finally, you reach your semester exam. Please remember there's two parts to the semester exam. First part will be computer scored with one written question, and the second part will be a Google Doc, and there are questions on that analyze your graph reading ability and general questions on the course. There's no surprises. You will have seen all of the questions before. Please remember, for my courses, if you have any direct questions, send me an email. I can then decide whether or not I need to call you into live help, and we can discuss it there, or if I can answer in email, I will. Okay. I wish you a great course and a great term. Thank you. Bye.